So Nima, does the USCIS just hate EB-5? I mean, that's a question that a lot of our investors and a lot of the regional centers have. I mean, I can give you an example. At Brevet, we have 5 regional centers that we've owned and managed and operated for many years, and every year we have to pay a $17,000 audit fee. Plus, we spend about $100,000 doing economic analysis annually to make sure we provide the correct information to USCIS in terms of how many jobs each one of these regional centers have created. So this is a $200,000 expense for 5 regional centers every year that we've incurred to make sure that we stay up to date, to make sure that we're we're conforming with every requirement that USCIS has. And all of these years we've spent all this, and all of a sudden we lose our regional centers. So I know I ran into Ron Klasko in Brussels last week, and he was saying that they had joined the Behring Regional Center lawsuit on behalf of IAUSA. And I wanted to clarify something you said earlier. IAUSA is actually not representing 5 regional centers on the Ron Klasko lawsuit, but IAUSA is representing all the regional centers, plus 5 separate regional centers are also class members. So it's 5 regional centers plus IAUSA that has a separate lawsuit going on. Although I've heard that the GT or the Greenberg Turing attorneys have completely butchered the case, and IAUSA has kind of saved the day. You want just maybe talking about that a bit?
I think, I'm not a litigator, right? I'm just a person with really strong opinions. So I don't know some of the mechanisms involved in what goes on in litigation, specifically with these motions to intervene. How you draft, your remedies when it comes to irreparable harm. How narrow can they be? How wide can they be? I can tell you, like, my personal opinion on this has been, if you listen to the hearing, the judge has been involved with EB-5 for hours, right? He hasn't been, the 10, 12 years that we've been on in this podcast. He's been involved with hours. And in that brief time, he was able to realize the USCIS has made an error in law, and he posed the open question of, does USCIS hate EB-5, right? He got that impression in hours.
So,
I think when it came to writing these, remedies, my guidance to Behring, with, again, my little litigation knowledge, is you need to keep your remedies narrow. You have proven irreparable harm, and so you need to ask to be reinstated as a regional center. And the judge, based on the hearing, was inclined to grant that, and grant that immediately. I think what has happened since is widening the remedies to include all regional centers, IIUSA representing all regional centers, and joining the lawsuit. We're asking for something much different now. We're not saying that one regional center has proven irreparable harm. They have proven damages. Let's put them back in business. We're saying the industry as a whole has harm, and put them back in business. And I think that's just a much bigger decision for a judge to take. It's a much bigger shot across the bow at USCIS of saying that USCIS and their attorneys and the way they handle policy is incompetent, essentially. I much would have preferred that the decision was for Behring alone. And now we have put pressure on USCIS, where you have one regional center that is active and no other regional centers are. I think that leaves USCIS in a position where they would be required to reverse position, or they would have to face further preliminary injunctions, from every other regional center in the space. What are they going to do if they get 600 preliminary injunctions?
And I think that's what sort of the judge was. I mean, I was on that hearing and I was listening to it. And first of all, like you were saying, it was really, you could tell that the judge was really trying to figure out EB-5 in this short amount of time. Of course, EB-5 has a lot of nuances to it that someone who hasn't been in the industry for all these years, needs to understand in order to make a proper decision. But I think it sounded like when he said that USCIS had made a legal error and he would grant this preliminary injunction just to the plaintiff, which is Behring, that the purpose was sort of to put the pressure on USCIS to then go ahead and do what it needed to do to rectify the entire issue.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. This industry is so funny, right? It's like everyone for himself. No one is going to help you. People will undercut you. People will say bad things about you to your face. All to make their projects and themselves look better. I mean, nobody was helping Behring before. You know, I don't know how many of these larger regional centers cared about Behring before, but now that there's been some traction on the lawsuit, it's all of a sudden, okay, we all have to play together. I think, Preeya, what you said is exactly correct. I think the judge was telling us in the hearing what needed to be in those pleadings, right? He's telling us that, hey, you have proven harm. I will grant this for you. But the idea of granting it for a whole industry, I don't know, you know? So I think look, we all need to be back in business, right? But I'll tell you that, the regional center clients that I represent, after they heard the hearing, they were all like, oh my God, I hope that they only make call in the regional center, and then we can all file our own PIs, and there's going to be so much pressure on USCIS, they're going to have to capitulate. But, then there's other regional centers that say, oh, no, we have to be included. It can't be call in alone. So the question is why, right? Why are some regional centers so confident to file their own PIs? Why are other regional centers not? Is it purely financial? Is it they don't want to open up their books to prove irreparable harm? I don't know. But I think any government agency, right, is going to be antagonistic if you sue them. And if you don't snatch victory out of the jaws of defeat. Is that right? Snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory. It feels a little bit by broadening the lawsuit. We're snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. I think we had it. I think we had an open case, a winning case, and then you have this decision in place that shows USCIS that whether or not you like the program or not, we are not to be messed with. We will continue to bring these litigation. We will continue to win. I think we've, significantly slowed down the process and probably put the judge in a tough position by broadening it. But, again, I could be wrong. I think, you're going to have other, legal experts in your future podcast episodes, and it may turn out that my opinion on this was wrong. Very rare that I'm wrong, but I could be,
And it's not so much that that people care or don't care about about Behring and their lawsuit, but as much as of a terrible job, in my opinion, Greenberg has done representing Behring in this case and that butchered all the filings. I still do believe if Behring loses this lawsuit, it's terrible for everyone in the industry, and which is why even though Ron Klasko is helping 5 regional centers and representing IIUSA in his separate lawsuit, it's instrumental for IIUSA and every other organization to support Behring to make sure that they win this lawsuit, because Behring losing this lawsuit could also have repercussions on the rest of the industry.
Yeah, and I got to say, Ron did an amazing job in his amicus brief. Really well done. I think what USCIS is saying is, okay, even if we made a mistake, we've created new forms, right? We've accepted money under these new forms. What do we now do? And they even said in their brief, they said, Colin is saying that we need to get rid of the new forms. We need to go back the way things are. How can we go back to old forms? It's a little bit of, yeah, okay, I robbed the bank, but I bought all this stuff now. What do I do with all this stuff? Right? It's like a really weird argument. It's like, we didn't cause the harm. It's not our problem for you to fix this, right? And I think the judge said in the hearing, he said, you very easily could just issue a new blog post saying all regional centers are back, and the forms are gone and we'll refund you the money. You're just choosing not to do that. I think, does USCIS hate EB-5? I think it really doesn't matter. I think we have regional centers like Behring, we have IIUSA, we have AIIA, we have organizations, we have the legends of Ira Kurzban. We have organizations that are going to carry the mantle. They're going to litigate USCIS to death if they go against, not really the EB-5 program, right? People really seem
it's going against democracy and going against the rule of people. You elect your congressmen and your senators, and they ruled on this. And this is democracy. This is how democracy works. It's a lot slower than we wanted. We wanted this 7 years ago, but because of democracy, it's taken 7 years for us to get our representatives in Congress, in the House and the Senate to make this legislation. And now some bureaucrats sitting in a USCIS office who just thinks that, hey, we don't want to give this visas to people they think are millionaires who really aren't. But we don't want to do this visa process, so we're going to be a dictatorship, and we're going to rule through this agency what we think the country should rule on. It's just ridiculous.
It's ridiculous, especially because USCIS is not funded by the budget; they're funded by legal fees. Nothing brings higher fees than EB-5. It's what got them those brand new beautiful IPO offices. But I think when they pass these laws, again, these senators, the staff of the senators, USCIS, they're not involved in this every day, right? You can't spend 12 years saying that you need a regional center, and if your regional center is terminated, it's a material change, and any pending application for an investor is going to be denied, and then all of a sudden come out and say, well, actually, you don't need a regional center to be approved. And during the court hearing, the AUSA for USCIS said, well, if the regional center is deauthorized, they'll just go find a new one. As if, any of us in the industry know, getting a new regional center to sponsor you, it's so difficult. And the other absolutely ludicrous thing is USCIS has spent the last 6-7 years narrowing the geographic footprint of regional centers, right? We used to be able to get the whole state, half the state. Now they're giving us 4 streets and an adjacent corner. So you want to terminate the regional centers. You think it's really easy for a regional center, for an investor, right, or a project to go get a new regional center, to pay those fees. But then you've also been eliminating, the geography that these regional centers cover. So it's you're really creating an impossible situation. Forget new investors, right? Forget new business, for existing investors. Most of these investors have due process rights. They're green card holders. I think USCIS is being awfully cavalier, with the lives of these investors, and most of these investors being exactly who we want in this country: educated, successful, children are in STEM programs. They're going to meet the jobs of tomorrow. It's really terrifying to me.